Have you ever gone through a difficult situation in your life? In today's session, you can discover how Naden went from millionaire to homeless and homeless to millionaire. So the first question is, what's the secret to your success and how did you end up being homeless and how did you go from homeless to millionaire? Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu, mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Well, that's a very interesting question. What was the first part of it? How did I become a millionaire?
So first, how did you go from millionaire to homeless?
Right. Okay. Well, it wasn't difficult. But anyway, essentially what happened was I was a very successful entrepreneur and, I'd done all the right things and I'd built up my own businesses and I'd also been a real student of success and learned everything I could. I'd been to lots of seminars and workshops and read all of the books by the famous success gurus on personal development and self-help and all of those things. So I was pretty clued up when it comes to understanding all of the things you need to do, like setting goals, being really clear about what you want, being highly motivated, gathering as much information about, and as many skills as you can to be successful. And I'd done all of that and I was doing pretty well. However, I got to a point where even though I was very successful, I had an enormous number of problems and stress in my life. And I was one of those people who's probably like 99% of successful entrepreneurs, is you reach a point where you say, is this really all there is? Is there anything else to life? And this isn't really what I'm looking for. Yes, I've got everything on my goals list. I've got the wonderful house and I've got the money and I've got the freedom, but there's something missing. There's something missing in my life because I don't feel great. I don't feel like I'm really successful. I've still got stress. I've still got problems. And often we justify that situation to ourselves by saying, oh, well, problems are natural. Problems are good for you. They make you stronger. You're never going to get away from problems and stress. You just have to learn to deal with it. That's part of being successful. That's the price you pay.
I can't hear anything. Okay, I can hear again.
And I got to thinking, this isn't worth it. Maybe I'd rather just throw everything away, the good and the bad, get rid of everything and start again, because I'd rather lose everything that I have rather than lose my soul. And literally within a few weeks, marriage, everything I had, and I had to move in with my elderly mother and sleep on the sofa in her living room. And I had literally nothing. Now, how I got to that point is an interesting question, because that was something I asked myself continually. How did this happen to me? I am a master of success. I know everything. I've got all my goals lists. I've got every strategy from every book that you can imagine. I've learned it all. I've learned about the law of attraction and reprogramming your subconscious.
Can't hear. Can't hear anything. Okay. So you learned about the law of attraction and?
Yeah, I'd learned about all of these things, but none of them were of any help in terms of stopping me from losing everything, because losing everything was not on my goals list. It was not part of the plan. So when I put my life back together and did something completely different, I realized there's something more, there's something different about how we really create the results in our life that's completely different to what we've all been taught about goals, the law of attraction, getting clear on what you want. You have to, and working really hard to achieve it. Because my new life didn't include any of those things, and yet it was far more successful. And that's what I went on a mission, was to discover what the difference was, what really makes us get the results we do in our life. Because as someone once said, life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. And so often we're off there trying to reach our goals, and all of these unexpected things are really what determine what happens in our life, the direction that our life moves in. You meet somebody and you end up marrying them. You look at them and you say, hey, wow, I think you're special. I think I want to spend my life with you. Now, before you meet them, you don't stand in a corner and say to yourself, right, in 10 minutes, I'm going to meet the person of my dreams and we're going to get married and we're going to do all these things together. You haven't got that on a goals list. You might have an idea that you want to meet somebody, but you haven't planned it out to meet that person. That happened unexpectedly, yet it was a completely life-changing experience. Or you find a business opportunity that comes to you out of the blue, or or a career opportunity. You don't plan these things. There is some, and these aren't just random events. It turns out there's a way that all of these things actually happen, and that's what I went on a mission to understand.
Thank you. So tell us, how did you go from being homeless to millionaire again? What do you feel were the elements or the steps, the routines, the habits, the, I don't know, different perspective, anything that you did that was different versus when you initially were making your first million?
Well, when I was lying on my mother's sofa with all these questions going around in my head, why has this happened to me? Life isn't fair. What do I do now? And all the state of confusion, I actually did the most fundamental thing, the most important thing without realizing it, that made all of the difference. And what that was, and by the way, I don't think I would have done this if I hadn't been in such a situation like this where I completely hit rock bottom. And what I actually did was I gave up. And I said, I give up. I don't have anything to give anymore. I don't have any energy. I'm not going to try and get myself out of the situation. I'm not going to try and figure out anymore why it's happened and what I should do. I'm not going to go and looking for opportunities. I'm not going to try and figure out what I really want. I'm not going to put together any plans. I'm just going to give up. And what I didn't realize is that I shifted the way I use my brain. And that is the all-important thing. Because if you're trying to achieve success, but your brain isn't in alignment, it's a complete waste of time. And that's why people struggle and don't achieve what they really want. And they never achieve the feeling of what they really want, which is true success, and why they end up with problems in their life. Because they're not aligned with their natural biology. But anyway, I did align with my natural biology without realizing it. And so how I made the next million, I didn't have to make it. It showed up. Because before I knew it, here I was lying on my mother's sofa. Before I knew it, I moved out of there. Nothing lasts forever. And a new relationship came along, someone who was far better than I'd ever met, and I was able to form a partnership with, and she and I are still together. Then my first business, my first money-making experience, if you like, after losing everything, it came along. I didn't go looking for it. It showed up. And then another business showed up. And my life became, and still is, this series of things showing up in my life. Before I knew it, I moved to Europe, bought a brand new yacht, and sailed for 8 years around Europe. And doing all these amazing things. And I got to the point of saying to myself, why are all these things showing up in my life? Where's the stress and problems? Because I didn't have any stress and problems. And I was managing, imagine this, you're in the Greek islands on your own yacht, in a bay, no one around, you've been anchored there all night, it's a beautiful sunny day, and you've got two businesses working for you with no problems and stress, with you not having to be in there with the hustle and grind to make them work. So I kept asking myself, why are these things showing up? Because how come before, when I was really focused, determined, I was going to make it happen, I had my goals, I kept setting higher and higher goals, I kept reading and learning and studying everything I could to become more skilled at being successful. How come when I did all of that, I ended up with stuff on the outside, I ended up with a lot of money, but I was totally miserable, stressed, and I lost everything? How come that happened? Now I have ended up with a lot of money and doing everything I love, no stress, no problems, things are falling into place, but I'm not setting any goals. I'm not going after any opportunities. I'm not really pushing anything. I'm not focused on wondering what I want or what I should do. I just do what shows up, the next thing that shows up in my life. And all of these things keep showing up. So that was the difference between pushing and struggling and really focused and trying hard to not trying at all, or putting an effort, but not struggle, and just allowing things to come to me. And people listening to this might say, oh, so you're talking about the law of attraction. You just sit there and focus on what you want and it all comes to you. It's nothing like that at all, because I didn't even have a picture of what I really wanted. And all of the things I ended up doing, the things I'm doing now, sailing around the world, teaching about the brain, talking to people like yourself, helping people all over the world to understand how to move beyond this life of struggle where you don't really succeed to the natural way to really succeed, that was never on my goals list. None of that. None of these things were what I thought I wanted to do. So it's about shifting the way you use your brain, so you literally allow a different part of your brain to do its job to bring you what you need. And people think, well, that does sound all spiritual and woo-woo, but what I discovered is this has a biological basis. This is natural and physically natural, a law of how things work, is the law of gravity. And you know about the law of gravity. You stand on top of a 10-story building and you say to yourself, I'm going to walk off this 10-story building and I'm going to fly into the air. And but it doesn't matter. You can meditate, you can pray, you can visualize, you can write it down 1,000 times. That's what you're going to do. You can work on all these techniques about changing your beliefs and subconscious mind so that you're absolutely certain that, and you can see it so clearly, you're going to go up in the air. But the second you step off, you're going to go straight down. So, because the laws of nature rule everything, and there's laws about success, there's laws about how we get what we get in our life that are just as natural and just as practical as the law of gravity.
Thank you. It sounds to me like you kind of surrendered to what was kind of meant to be. But I do wonder, how did you make your first $10,000? Because let's say if you kind of went from millionaire to homeless, and then you ended up on your mom's couch. How did you get your initial step? Because I find sometimes the hardest thing is getting back up, getting your first, 5 clients or 10 clients or whatever it is. And it's with that you can do, you can do ads, you can do so many different things. And then from there, you have a budget to work with. Whereas when you have 0, 0, 0, it's like, that feels like the hardest thing. I cannot imagine what you would do with 0.
I think the thing is, I've probably like you, I'm sure, I've interviewed a lot of very successful people and worked with some very successful people as well. People come to me because they want more than just the grind and the hustle, and they want more than just the next technique that's just going to keep them on the hamster wheel of more grind and hustle. They want to know how to break free and really start to live a natural life that's perfectly balanced and where they really feel fulfilled in their life. But the essential thing that I've learned from my own experience and from talking to many other people as well is this whole question of how do you do something is almost the wrong way to go about it, because everybody's saying who doesn't know how to do something, how do I do this? You don't need to know how. And any successful person will tell you, when I've asked them, how did you get to where you are? They say, I don't really know how I got to where I am. I just did what showed up, and I just put one foot in front of the other, and I just kept going. And this is how I ended up to where I am. I have a person I know who had a very successful business. He had a million customers in 85 countries, and he had 500 staff and 2 private jets. And he said to me, Lem, the only way I could do all of that is if I just did the next thing all the time. He said, it was never on my goals list. You can't put that sort of thing on a goals list to have a business this big. If I'd had a goals list, I would have limited myself. So I think the important thing, because it's not what I did or what I do, I think it's actually irrelevant what we do compared to the mindset of just taking the next thing that comes along, not worrying about what's going to happen or where it's going to go, not spending your time analyzing things, not spending your time telling yourself you haven't got enough information, that you need to plan and learn all this stuff before you can act. It's about just acting. It's about taking the next step. And that ties in with how your brain naturally operates. You have a thriving part of your brain, which I call your creative brain, which is designed to make you fulfill your biological purpose. Now, I'm asking people who are listening, do you know what your biological purpose is? Do you know what the purpose of your body is? Do you know how your body is designed to live in this world? None of us have ever been taught about that. But the reality is, if you ask any biologist, how is life designed? We talk about the law of gravity. What's the law that governs life? The most important thing to life. And any biologist will tell you, all life has one primary function, and that is to survive. Everything above all else is wired and designed to survive. And the way everything survives, or what gives it the greatest chance to survive, is by being its best, by thriving, in other words. So every living thing is literally biologically designed to thrive, to be its best. And for us, That also means being happy. It means being our best mentally and emotionally, as well as physically healthy as we can be as well. And our brain is simply a machine that's designed to ensure that happens. And it will do it predictably, reliably. You can absolutely bet on it that it'll do it if you use the machine, your brain, the right way. If you know anything about machines, any machine that you might, if you operate a machine and you don't know how to use it, you're going to make a mess of things. It's not going to do the job that it's designed to do. Like a motor car, it's a common example I use. A car's going to get you to where you want to go if you drive it right. But if you don't, what's going to happen? You're going to end up with problems. Problems are going to show up. Now, when problems show up with your motor car, you don't say, oh, that's natural and that, it's just normal and that's the way it is. You say there's something wrong. I'm driving it the wrong way. I'm doing something wrong. And of course, if you don't know how to drive a car, you might question, well, maybe I need to learn how to drive this thing. Maybe it's not supposed to operate the way I do. It's exactly the same with your brain. If problems show up in your life, it's merely a sign that your machine, the brain, is being used the wrong way, because your brain is not naturally designed to create problems for you. It's there to do the opposite. It's there to make you thrive without problems, being your best, being fulfilled. So it's simply about understanding that there is a part of your brain that is designed to do that and will do that guaranteed if you know how to activate it, if you know how to use it. But 99% of people are stuck using another part of their brain without even realizing it. And when I say stuck, it's a part of the brain that literally blocks you from success. It gets you doing the wrong things. It keeps you confused and frustrated and afraid and lacking energy and lacking motivation and worry. And it keeps you in a state of inaction and making mistakes because it has a different function. We probably don't have time to talk about what that function is, but it's something I go into detail in my coaching. So if you're going to try and use that part of your brain, it's literally like trying to drive your car when it's in first gear, you've got the handbrake on and you've put the wrong fuel in. It's just not going to work. But if someone comes along to you and says, well, this is how the gears work, and you've got to take that lever, the brake off, and you have to put this fuel in, and it all works perfectly, you go, well, why didn't I know about that? It would have been so much easier to know that rather than struggle along and say, well, everyone else is driving their car like this. We've all got problems, so it must be normal. It's not the way nature works.
Thank you. My question is, how can entrepreneurs who are homeless or who are at a 0 point, how can they get back up? Because normally when you are at that point, you could potentially be quite stressed. So when you're stressed, you're not really yourself. You're just thinking about survival. Okay, how am I going to put money on the table? How am I going to feed my children? How am I going to, pay my rent, whatever else? So how can entrepreneurs take the right next step when all they're thinking about is, I think when you're in that stress mode, you kind of tend to take a lot of the wrong decisions, and you can take a lot of the wrong steps, and also perhaps you can look scared as well. So fear can actually repel your potential clients as well.
Absolutely right. And it's all to do with how the brain works, because when you feel fear, all of those things you've described, when you're in this fear state, it's what I call when you're using your survival brain, which is a very primitive primary part of your brain, which is only designed to protect you from a threat or to your survival, from a danger. It doesn't have any of it's not your creative brain, which is all the answers to your problems, the opportunities that you see, your creativity, your imagination, your awareness. It's where you get those gut feelings from. And it's where you see those opportunities that you didn't see otherwise. And it's where you find the right answers to do anything. And it's where you have the right perspective on what's actually going on in your life. But instead, what happens when you're in this stress state, you're absolutely right. You don't know what to do. You're confused. You're frustrated. You're afraid. And you're thinking, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. How do I get out of this? This is awful. And what you don't realize is you're using this part of your brain, which is keeping you stuck. You don't want to be in that state. You don't want to have these thoughts of confusion, but your brain is forcing you to, because it's the part of the brain that is very limited in its awareness that you've activated. And how you activate it is through fear and stress. The things that happen to you in your life don't make you feel stressed. It's you feeling stressed that causes the things to happen in your life. So what you need to do, and I have a whole coaching program around this, you need to start changing your perspective. And there's lots of ways you can do this, but if somebody's there in this really stressed state, you have to start looking at it in a different way and realizing there is another way to look at it. It's just that your brain can't see it. Because imagine if actually, here's a concept to think about. Imagine if everything in this world, absolutely everything, was perfect, except your ability to see it. So it's not that everything isn't perfect, it's just you can't see it. You see all the faults, all the problems in your own life and in the world and everything else. What happens if that's not reality? And there's lots of scientific research about what is reality, and it's not what we perceive it to be, but what we perceive it to be creates our own reality. This gets into the area of quantum physics, which is probably a little bit deep for what we're talking about. But what we need to realize is it's just our perspective that makes it seem the way it is. And you can change your perspective. So even when you're homeless and you've got nothing, you can start to ask yourself better questions. And one is, for instance, to say, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Say, why is this happening for me? What's the opportunity here? What's the gift here? And when you start to play with that idea, you come up with some really interesting ideas. Who knows that you going through this really stressed, homeless, awful phase of your life isn't because down the track, you're going to be able to, only because you've had that experience, you're going to be able to help other people who are in that experience, having that experience as well. You're going to be able to help them get out of that situation. And then you can imagine having people come to you and say, you know, I heard your story about when you were being homeless and you got through it. And you really realized you learned so much from that experience, learned so much that you would never have learned if you'd not been through it. And you've become such a better person for it. And now you've guided me and shown me, because I'm in this terrible situation, but you're giving me hope and you're helping me understand. And you've really helped me tremendously, far more than you could ever know. You don't know that the reason you're going through that awful situation isn't for a bigger purpose. And you have to experience that for that bigger purpose to manifest in your life, the real purpose why you're here. And that, so, you know, you might say this is just playing with words. It's changing your perspective, and it's changing it to what is a very valid way of looking at it, because that's exactly what happened to me. If someone had said to me don't think I wasn't stressed when I was homeless and had nothing, people calling me constantly wanting money I didn't have. And it seemed like I had absolutely no hope. I'd moved to a town where I knew nobody. Everybody I thought were friends, they all disappeared. I had no opportunities. So I know what it's like, but I also know you can get through it and you can turn it into the greatest gift of your life. And it's not just losing everything, it's any experience we have that is traumatic can be a great gift. And many people throughout history who've gone on to great things have had these traumatic experiences, and they've said, this is a major factor in why I'm where I am. It's taught me so many things. It's made me a much better person, and I'm really grateful that experience happened. So when you start to look at it like that, when you start to change your perspective, when you start to take the pressure off yourself, or as I say in my coaching, when you let yourself off the hook, when you start to take that pressure off, that gives your brain an opportunity to start to find solutions to your situation for you. It'll never find that when you're stuck in this really stressful state. But when you start to open your creative brain, as I call it, that's when you start to see opportunities. And it's when you don't just see them, they show up in your life, which is the same thing, I guess. And then you start to make progress. You never make any progress when you're stuck here trying to figure it out, feeling sorry for yourself, which is understandable, or getting stressed and worried about all these terrible things that you might happen in the future, or all your regrets for the past or whatever. You're never going to make any progress. And it's because your brain state, the part of your brain you're using, is not designed to help you to make progress. That part of your brain, the creative brain, is what you need to activate. And you activate that through things like gratitude, appreciation, awareness, and seeing things in a different way that start to make you think, well, there's possibilities here. And we, this experience, as you start to free up your brain and you feel better, you feel lighter, and that's how you make progress.
Thank you. What are some better questions entrepreneurs can ask themselves when they want to go from homeless to millionaires?
Well, of course, the one I mentioned, why is this happening for me? What's the opportunity here? What's the gift? Instead of, too often as entrepreneurs, we have this tunnel vision, and we've all been taught you have to have goals and you have to sit down and figure out, get clarity on your life. It's all a load of nonsense, if you don't mind me saying. We can never get clarity on our life. We can never figure out what we want in our life, particularly when we're stressed, because when we're stressed, we're using this part of our brain which has no awareness about what we need. This is a fight, flight, protection weapon. It doesn't know what you want or what you should have in your life. You'll never figure it out from that place. So instead of trying to figure stuff out, ask yourself, why is this happening for me? And the other most powerful question, what's the next step? Don't think about the 10 or the 20 steps or where you're going or where you think you should be going or whether you're going in the wrong direction. Just say to yourself, what's the next step? What's the next thing I need to do? And that, again, allows this creative part of your brain to show you the next step. Because this part of your brain operates only on showing you the next step. It doesn't operate on showing you the big picture, the big goal, because you probably wouldn't believe it anyway. Like when I was homeless, if my brain had told me what my ultimate goal that was going to make me really happy, I thought it would be ridiculous. I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have done anything to try and make it happen. So your brain only shows you the next step. And then you're expected to take that next step. That's how it works. That's how creation works in your life as well. You just keep taking the next step. So those two questions, why is this happening for me? What's the gift here? And what's the next thing I should do? And just see where it leads. Treat life like an adventure rather than thinking, well, I know my destination and I have to make sure I go there. What's the fun in that? Why not make your destination something that you've never even thought of? Make it a surprise for yourself. So forget all that stuff and just say, what's the next step? And treat it like an adventure and go, and after you take the next step, your brain is going to show you the next step after that. Take that step. Just keep taking it one step at a time. And you build this momentum that's not based on fear. It's based on trust. You know that you're going to do the right thing because the right things show up in your life when you use this part of your brain. You make the right decisions.
You make the right decisions, you said. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said you make the right decisions. Repeat. That was the last word I heard. The last word I heard. Yes, the last word I heard from you was that's when you make the best decisions, when you take the next step.
Absolutely. All you need to do.
Thank you.
You don't need to plan stuff out.
Okay, so I was going to ask, what if your next step is something you're actually afraid of, like speaking to high-ticket clients that you can help deep in your heart and you can do it better than anyone else, but you're still afraid of it?
Well, you just ask yourself, why am I afraid of it? What's the worst that can happen? Does it matter? But when you're thinking about giving a speech, what are you really thinking about? You're not thinking about the next step. You're thinking about the next 20 steps. The next step is to walk up onto the stage. That's all you need to think about. Put that first foot on the first step onto the stage. Then when I've done that, I'll think about putting the next foot. And then when I get to the top, I'll walk one step at a time across the stage. And then I'll stand at the podium or whatever I'm doing. And then I'll say the words. That's all you need to think about. And there's a whole school of philosophy, if you like, designed around this very idea, which is called mindfulness. But throughout history, every spiritual tradition has taught us what this is. This is living in the present, being here right now in the present moment. There's books like The Power of Now, and what's the other one by Ram Dass? Be Here Now. All these books about that's all you need to do is just be here right now. In the Bible, it says, give no thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Now, what that means, it doesn't mean when the sun comes up tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is the very next moment. Don't worry about the next moment. Just focus on this moment. And your brain, when you really understand this and when you start to get an experience of living this way, then you notice that everything just flows. The right words come out of your mouth. Now, of course, you've probably trained yourself up and practiced, but you're not worried about what's going to come out of your mouth. Something takes over, and we call this, there's a word for this, it's called being in the flow. How many times have we heard athletes or creative people, artists, musicians talk about they get into the state and things are just flowing. and they get this inspiration. Musicians, composers say things like, Mozart, when he was asked where he got his music came from, he just said, I don't know. I just heard it and then I just wrote it down. This is this natural creative process. And it's not just artists, even athletes talk about they get in the state where something takes over and it's almost effortless what they're doing. So what's happening here? This is your biology at work. This is the way this is how you thrive. And if you've ever had that experience, which I'm sure everyone has, those moments where you feel great and everything's going well and you feel in the flow, that's the way we're naturally supposed to be all of the time. And what blocks that is our attachment to outcomes, our fear, our worry about things, our over-analysis, overthinking. We're not just allowing our brain to make all the right things come out of our mouth or out of our body or people to show up or the right things to show up, but that's the way we're naturally designed. That's the way all of nature operates. All of nature doesn't go around with plans and, and fear and trying to figure things out. It just does the very next step. If you observe an animal or a bird, it just takes the next step. So if you're worried about what's going to happen, just say to yourself, what's causing my fear and anxiety is I have some attachment to an outcome that I'm worried about. So when I get on that stage, I'm worried that people won't like me, or that it won't be the best speech they've all heard, or that it won't lead on to amazing other things in my life. I'm worried about because I'm going to say the wrong things and I'm going to be laughed at or ridiculed. You don't need to think about any of that stuff. Instead, think, well, what's the worst that can happen? It'll be a learning experience. Something unexpected might happen. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's like losing everything. It's all perfect. You'll look back in retrospect with everything that happens in your life, and you'll realize everything was absolutely perfect to get to me to where I am right now. If anything had been different, for me, and I'm sure for you and people listening, if anything had been different in your life, we wouldn't all be here right now. And I don't know about you, but here right now is a great place to be. So it's all perfect. So don't worry. Again, it says in the Bible, do not worry about anything. Don't worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear, because it's all going to be provided for you. You don't have to struggle to get it. It's going to be provided for you. And the way it provides it is through this part of your brain. So again, this is science. This isn't some spiritual idea. Your only job is to learn how to manage and activate and keep this part of your brain at work all of the time so that the right things happen in your life, and to learn how to stop all of the triggers and the things that are keeping you stuck, that are keeping you afraid, stressed, and worried. Because all of those things are simply your brain looking at things the wrong way. They're telling you you're homeless and that's really terrible, instead of telling you you're homeless, that's a real gift and an opportunity. It's an experience that you have to go through so you develop some skills and experience to be able to share and help other people with, and to make your own life much better than it ever would have been. Because if you think about when I was this stressed entrepreneur and pushing and everything, if I hadn't lost everything and become homeless and then start and realize I had to do something different, I'd still be like that. I'd still be this stressed, unhappy, frustrated. I'm so glad I went through that experience so that I'm no longer like that. But that's what it took for me to reach what I really wanted, that to be the best, to thrive.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential, so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.